Let's take you straight to all the latest details coming in from the Supreme Court. Today is the last day of hearing one of the most talked about cases in the country. For 40 days, Supreme Court has been listening daily to the Ayodhya land dispute case. And the closing arguments will be heard all by 5 p.m. today. All arguments will close by then, and then the judgment is expected in about a month's time from now. Now, the last day is also witnessing some dramatic scenes from the lawyer of the Muslim side tearing up the map submitted from the Hindu Mahasabha side and saying that these evidences, new evidences, should not be added last minute. The things got so heated up that the CJI, Chief Justice of India, threatened to walk out of the hearing as that happened. Now, all this is unfolding in court number 1 of Supreme Court. Let's go across to Sunil Prabhu, who's joining us from outside the Supreme Court to take us through all the latest of what's happening. But before that, to quickly recap for you what's happened from 10:30 this morning. When the court sat in, the CJI was the first one to begin. He started by saying, enough is enough. We've heard all sides of the argument. Today we conclude. All concluding arguments will be heard today until 5 p.m. and post that, no more. He said enough is enough. Post that, there have been a lot of these dramatic developments that are happening. But before that, the mediation panel, remember the 3-member mediation panel that was formed by the same bench, the Ayodhya bench of Supreme Court, which said that they parallelly, while they went on to hear the case on a day-to-day basis, the mediation panel would work on the ground and try to build up consensus. That mediation panel filed its second report, composed of these 3 people on your screens right now. They composed their second report and submitted that to the Supreme Court. Now, what's in that report, even the details available to us, we cannot tell you because we are under the guidelines of the Supreme Court saying none of the mediation matters should be reported in the press. The first one was said to be a bit inconclusive. The second one, we do not know what it says at this point, but the court will be considering that. But post that, some dramatic turn of events. Now, the lawyer representing the Muslim side tore off some maps and pictorial representations that were being submitted by the lawyer presenting the Hindu Mahasabha. There, in fact, to quote him, and these are details that we are getting in from my colleague Vaidyanathan, he went on to say, that Vikas Singh, appearing for the All India Hindu Mahasabha, tried to play some publication by Kunal Kishore. Dhawan, who is representing the Muslim side, asked the bench not to take it on record as the application was rejected on March 14, this application to submit and press new record in front of the court. Now, to that, the Hindu lawyer said that there is an order by the court and that it could be placed, and justices have written forwards in these books and that they should consider this evidence. To that, the lawyer from the Muslim Waqf Board went down to say that the Supreme Court should not rely on this book, and he tore up the map and threw it. CJI, obviously not liking decorum being broken in his court, then had to intervene and say that things should be followed according to decorum, or else he will walk out of the court. Sunil Prabhu live with us now from the Supreme Court lawns. Sunil, the last day certainly seeing very dramatic scenes from inside the court, and we know 3 important things that have happened since morning. Number 1, today is the last day. Until 5 p.m. all the arguments will close. Number 2, the mediation report that has been submitted to the court. That's a very important component to how the entire case is unfolding. And number 3, now these maps, which basically talk about the Janmabhoomi, where exactly which is the most talked about and the most controversial piece of that land. That map being torn by the lawyer of the Muslim Waqf Board.
Well, I think I'll take the last question and put it in context. That map that you're talking about has already been rejected by the court itself much earlier. And it's in that context that when that attempt was being made to give it to the judges, the book along with the map, the opposing side, and in this case Mr. Rajeev Dhavan, for the Muslim Waqf Board, arguing and saying that this has already been rejected, interrupting the judge and making a very, very categorical point that this has not been accepted. And it's in that backdrop that this decision was done to accept, not to accept these maps. And with the permission of the court, let me remind you that with the permission, Mr. Dhawan asked, can I tear it? And then he tore it. So that's something that happened with the permission of the court. It's a different matter than later on things went a little bit out of decorum, and that is why the Chief Justice of India, who had first given permission, wanted things to be calmed down, saying that the decorum of the court had to be kept because there were really heated arguments between both sides. Having said that, arguments continue on the issue of mediation that you talked about. As I was pointing out earlier, you need two hands to clap. In this case, there is only one hand. The other side has already walked away. So that mediation report is evident. There has been no real progress, and ultimately it will be the 5-judge bench which will have to find a way forward on this matter. Of course, this is the final day of hearing. The Chief Justice of India acting more like a timekeeper to ensure that everybody's arguments are given. Some of them, of course, are repetitive arguments which have already been pointed out, which have been pointed out by the bench, but yet each petitioner wanting to give his side of the story, his point, so as to impress upon the 5-judge bench. But definitely this has been one of the longest hearings after the Keswan Bharati case, and it's in that backdrop we'll now have to wait and watch and see how things evolve.
And the map that was being torn, Sunil, what exactly does it show? It has to be something so crucial that it has, kind of stirred up so many sentiments in the court. I see you smiling to that. But according to Vaidya, who's inside, our colleague, he sent us this, that Rajeev Dhavan has torn the pictorial map showing the Janmasthan, the exact spot of the Janmasthan, and that's the map that is under question at this point.
Well, as I pointed out, what Vaidyanathan and I were both present, and we must report factually. I don't want to be in contempt of court, and that is why, you must be extremely careful with what you say. It's very important to know that this point, this map, this book was never accepted as evidence. So any reference to any reporting that is taking place which is not part of a proceeding cannot be accepted, and the court itself made that clear. And it's in that context that the other side opposing lawyer asked the permission of the court to tear it. So, tempers are frayed, the country is watching, and that is the reason why we must be very, very careful about what exactly we report and how we report these events that have unfolded in the Supreme Court. These are, of course, the final decision will come when the judges come to a judgment. This wasn't a question about whether this can be taken as evidence, even though it was written by two retired Chief Justice of India. That's not the point. A foreword in one book by G.B. Patnaik, another foreword by M.N. Venkatacharya, with these maps that are there. The fact of the matter is that does not give legitimacy, that has not been admitted as evidence, and it's in that backdrop that the Supreme Court had not allowed that proceeding. So they're not taking that into cognizance. And as I said, and I repeat, Mr. Rajeev Dhawan asked the court, can I have your permission to tear it? And with that, he tore the map that was being referred to.
Very important clarification there. Thank you so much, Sunil, for underlining that, because so far we thought that it was done, under sentiments, but you're saying he sought the permission of the judges and then tore it because it has now not been included as any evidence. Very important clarification there. Thanks for that.